I want to begin by familiarizing ourselves with the workspace area. There are three main windows that we will be using while working on our projects: the project window, the composition window, and the timeline window. The project window will display our files as they will be used in our composition. The composition window will display our files as they will be used for the final output. The timeline window will display our files as they appear in order and along the timeline. I will be showing you the rest of the features for these windows throughout these training series. Let's take a look at the menus that we'll be using while we work on our projects. Each menu has a certain number of items, but we'll only be going over the ones that are important to us right now. This is the File menu. Here you can create new projects and open old ones. You can also save the currently selected project. We can also import and export our files from this menu. This is the Edit menu. Here we can undo and redo changes that we've made to our composition. We can also copy and paste layers from this menu. This is the Composition menu. Here we can create new compositions and change the settings for the currently selected composition. We'll also be using this menu to create our final output. This is the Layer menu. Here we can create new layers and change the settings of the currently selected layer. This will affect the way that the layer is displayed in the composition window and the timeline window. This is the Effect menu. Here we can add effects to the currently selected layer. We can also access the effects controls from this menu. This is the Animation menu. Here we can add keyframes to certain layers and expressions, which I will be getting into later during the training. This is the View menu. Here we can change the settings of the composition for how it is displayed in our workspace. This is the Window menu. Here we can find all of our palettes and workspace windows. Now that we've familiarized ourselves with the workspace, I want to begin talking about palettes. Palettes can be found in the Window menu in this area. Let's begin with the Tools palette. This is a selection tool. It can be used to select files within the composition window. You can tell that they're selected by the boxes that surround them. You can also move and scale files with this tool. The Rotate tool can be used to rotate files within the composition. It can also select and rotate other files by clicking and dragging. This is the Hand tool. This allows you to move the entire composition around so that you can work on certain areas. This is the Zoom tool. Clicking will allow you to zoom in, and clicking and dragging will allow you to zoom into a certain area. Holding the Alt button while clicking will allow you to zoom out. This is the Mask tool. Whenever you have a file selected, clicking and dragging will allow you to hide and show certain areas of the file. This is the Pan Behind tool. This will allow you to move the file within the mask. Okay. This is the Text tool. Notice that another palette has come up. This will allow us to change properties to the text. Clicking will allow us to begin typing. Selecting the Select tool will allow us to move the type around. and other changes that we've made. Here we can change the font for the current type. Okay. We can change the size of the type here, and it's kerning and leading. We can also change the justification in the paragraph palette. This is the pen tool. It can be used to make paths, to create masks, or to create paths for animation. These three tools are the brush tool, the stamp tool, and the eraser tool. They also have their own palette where modifications can be made. These will be used to manipulate layers, and I'll get into that later when we begin talking about layers. You'll also notice that there's a few grayed out icons here. These are going to be used for 3D space. They're grayed out right now because we can't select them since we're not using 3D space. Okay. Now let's look at the info palette. The info palette has information about the current color within the composition window and its current XY axis. Any changes that are made to the composition are displayed in this area. These are our time controls. This will play our composition along the timeline. This is our audio palette. It can be used to change channels from left and right, and for both. This is the effects and preset palette. This will allow you to add effects to files by clicking and dragging them, but we'll get into that later. These are the character and paragraph palettes that came from the tools palette. And you'll notice that there's other palettes that were used for the other tools. And we'll discuss those later when we get into the layers. Snapshots can be used in a composition to reference an area, so they can be used later on in the composition. Right here I have three boxes, and you notice that in the timeline some of the boxes disappear. So let's say that I want to move this green box to where this orange box is, but it's disappeared. So I simply click the Take Snapshot button, and it takes a snapshot of this frame. I move to another area in the time bar, and by pressing the Show Last Snapshot, it'll show me the frame that I took a snapshot of. Here I can move my green box to where I wanted the orange box, to where I wanted it to be over the orange box. And now we can see that I can move it to that position. I can move it later on and move it over to this blue box. You can take up to 4 snapshots by holding the Shift button and pressing F5 through F8. So there's F5, There's F6, F7, and F8. And if I go through the buttons, we can see the F5, F6, F7, and F8. And I'm showing these by just pressing the F5 and the F buttons without the shift button. The camera in this snapshot picture works exactly as the F5 button, so you only have 4 snapshots that you can take. Now we'll discuss safe frames in the composition window. We can find safe frames by going to the safe frame button, which is located here. It looks like a little target. The safe frame turns on and we can see that it shows us the exact center of our composition and the action safe and title safe. We can also use this to section off our composition into 4 quadrants. You can see. The reason for the action safe is to keep the important actions within this area, so that when it's used for its final output, it can play to the edge of the screen or beyond the edge of the screen, and we don't have to worry about any important things getting clipped off. And the title safe works in the same way, but it's a little bit smaller because the text will be harder to read as if it's pushed more towards the edge of the screen. And so we just keep it in this area for better readability. That's not to say that we can't have things that go beyond these areas, but these are our areas to keep things more readable, and we won't have to worry about losing any information.